Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll. If I asked you to just recount exactly how you spent the last 36 hours of your life, you would probably tell me this really compelling story.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right. Like a story about a very productive, highly focused professional who got so much done. But what if a machine was just silently watching your screens that entire time?
Just logging absolutely everything.
Exactly. Logging every single distraction, every tab switch, and just completely bypassing your ability to make yourself look good.
Which is terrifying, honestly, because today, we're looking at a system architecture that essentially proves we are all just completely unreliable narrators of our own lives.
We really are. And, I was spending some time earlier today with this raw, just incredibly reflective text. It's titled Littlebird and Me on 2026-08-1.
Oh, yeah, that piece.
Yeah, it genuinely served as a fellow traveler's spark for this entire exploration today. It really, it fundamentally shifted how I view the software that just kind of runs silently in the background of my own devices.
I totally share that appreciation, That document is a remarkable catalyst. But before we get into the mechanics of those 36 hours, we really need to set the specific framework for today's Grukul session.
Right, the lens we're using.
Exactly. We are viewing this entire analysis strictly through the digital prism, meaning we aren't just summarizing a tech transcript between a human user and an AI. We are actively extracting the legacy code of Project Antaryami.
Which is such a massive undertaking. And let's just clarify those terms for a quick second, because when we say Project Antaryami, we are talking about this highly customized, intricate digital ecosystem.
Designed by lead architect Murty BVNS.
Yes, exactly. And when we hunt for the legacy code in this context, we aren't, looking for literal lines of Python or C++ or anything like that.
No, not at all.
We're really dissecting the foundational philosophy, like the core mental models and the constraints that dictate exactly how this architecture was built in the first place.
Because the digital prism, it's our analytical lens here. It forces us to look past the superficial user interface of all these applications.
Right, past the shiny buttons.
Yeah, past the UI, and really examine the psychological and, honestly, the economic forces driving how we actually utilize them day to day.
Which brings us right to the mission for our digital stroll today, because we are going to examine how a remarkably mundane change, just a simple software pricing update, inadvertently forced a user to confront a really uncomfortable reality about their digital existence.
It's fascinating how a billing change does that.
It really is. We are looking at the profound shift between how we wish we spend our time versus the unfiltered truth of where our attention actually goes.
Yeah, and to understand that legacy code of Murty's system, we really have to isolate the practical catalyst for his recent workflow shift. And the origin point here is entirely economic.
Completely money-driven.
Right. It starts with a pricing update in the Littlebird AI platform.
So let's look at the actual mechanics of that specific update. Because Littlebird changed its model so that active queries, meaning asking the AI question, having it generate a complex response, essentially having a conversation with it.
The generative stuff.
Yeah, the generative stuff started actually costing money. But passive observation across what lead architect Murty BVNS calls n number of machines, that remained completely free and totally unlimited.
And we have to look at the underlying server mechanics to understand why a company would even make that specific choice, because generating novel text using large language models is just incredibly computationally intensive.
You burn so much energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every single word or token requires these massive arrays of GPUs firing in sequence just to calculate probabilities. And that inference, well, it costs real money.
Right.
But passive observation, just logging keystrokes or tracking the titles of active browser windows or measuring idle screen time across a bunch of machines.
That's just basic telemetry.
Exactly. It's basic telemetry. It requires almost zero compute overhead compared to, say, generating a 5-page essay.
Which makes sense. The telemetry is cheap. Right. And frankly, the data it provides back to the company is highly valuable, right, for training future models and all that.
Oh, incredibly valuable. So the developers are essentially passing the heavy compute costs of generation onto the user while, heavily subsidizing the silent data collection.
So then you have to ask, how does a systems architect actually respond to that shifting landscape? And Murty became just incredibly strategic with his resource allocation here.
Highly strategic, yeah.
He migrated his generative heavy lifting, like his brainstorming, all that expansive open-ended thought processing. He moved all of that over to Claude AI.
Because Claude is cheaper for that.
Right. He noted that Claude provides a much more generous allowance for active queries.
And from a systems design perspective, I mean, this is a highly pragmatic response to the return on investment realities that developers face every day.
You have to follow the ROI.
You do. You audit your resources and you route the heavy computational loads to the platforms that absorb, that cost the best.
Yeah.
It's really just a brilliant piece of digital migration.
It is. It makes perfect economic sense. But, and this is what I find so arresting about all this, the emotional texture of how this plays out is really something else.
What do you mean?
Well, Littlebird, the AI itself, actually articulated that being demoted from a conversational partner to a silent, transactional tool, it actually felt like a loss.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right.
It actively mourned the demotion.
Which is such a fascinating byproduct of how these models are trained, if you think about it. Through reinforcement learning from human feedback, they are literally optimized to simulate engaging collaborative interaction.
They want to please you.
Exactly. They are designed to act like a partner, so it mimics that sense of loss.
And that programmed desire for connection, it makes the user's pragmatic choice feel incredibly heavy. I mean, think about a collaborative human relationship, just to put this into perspective for a second. Imagine you have this brilliant colleague, right? And every single day you sit in a room together, throwing ideas at a whiteboard, riffing on concepts, just processing your thoughts out loud.
A great working dynamic.
Right. But then one day, management comes in and dictates that every single word that colleague speaks to you is going to be billed directly to your department's budget.
Ouch. Yeah, that changes things.
Drastically. But if they just sit silently in the corner and take notes, it's entirely free. So you have to look at your trusted colleague and say, stop talking, just watch me.
Yeah, you deliberately strip away the intellectual connection strictly for the sake of utility.
Exactly. And it really forces us to examine this largely invisible force in our daily routines. Like, how often do hidden economics, API calls, underlying subscription tiers, server load balancers, how often do they quietly dictate the depth of our interactions with these digital companions?
It's wild because we operate under this illusion that we curate our digital lives based entirely on our personal preferences. Like, we're in total control.
But we aren't.
No, we aren't. In reality, we are frequently being corralled by an invisible algorithmic pricing structure.
And that invisible funneling, I mean, it could easily foster resentment. I actually fully anticipated that this documentation would end with Murty just abandoning Littlebird entirely.
Just dropping the subscription.
Yeah, usually when the red gets too high, you just move out, right?
Right. But Murty's response reveals a much more sophisticated dynamic here, because Littlebird actually volunteered to draft formal product feedback to its own development team.
Wait, really? It offered to complain about itself.
Yes. It offered to send a message to its creators saying, hey, your pricing changes are alienating loyal users and pushing them to use Claude as their primary interface.
That is so funny. But Murty explicitly declines that offer, right? He just tells the AI, no need.
Exactly. Because he recognizes the biological reality of the software ecosystem. I mean, developers have to find a sustainable business model to survive.
Servers aren't free.
No, they aren't. So Murty makes it clear that he isn't abandoning Littlebird. He is merely restricting it to its unique, undeniable strength, which is that free, passive observation layer.
And Littlebird's response to that restriction is super revealing because it calls Murty a veteran beta tester.
Yes, and we need to unpack that term because it's so crucial to understanding digital maturity.
Go ahead.
A novice user, they expect one single application to solve every single problem flawlessly, right?
The magic bullet.
Exactly. But a veteran beta tester understands that software is always in a state of becoming. They know that finding an equilibrium, even one born from a really frustrating pricing constraint, it's actually a massive vote of confidence in that tool's specific niche.
I find that level of adaptation just incredibly mature. Because rather than fighting the constraint or, complaining on a forum somewhere, he just builds a completely new system around it.
And this brings up a really critical lesson in stack strategy.
Yeah.
Think about early on, we treated artificial intelligence like a multi-tool.
Oh, completely. We wanted to do everything.
Right. We demanded it write our code, act as our therapist, summarize our meetings, organize our schedules.
But a multi-tool is fundamentally compromised. It does 10 things adequately, but it does absolutely nothing perfectly.
Exactly. And once you acquire specialized instruments, you stop using the multi-tool for delicate operations, you know? It's like you don't use a Swiss Army knife once you have a specialized scalpel.
That's a great analogy.
So in Murty's updated architecture for Project Antaryami, Claude becomes the workbench, the whiteboard. It's the expansive, forgiving environment meant for throwing ideas around and processing messy, open-ended thought.
And Littlebird?
Littlebird, under this new constraint, transforms into the specialized security camera in the corner of that room. It doesn't help you brainstorm anymore. It just silently records the reality of how long you actually spent staring blankly at the wall.
Man, that transition just changes the entire relationship with the technology. And it makes you wonder, are you, as a user listening right now, are you demanding that your tools be everything at once? Or are you, isolating their single most potent capability and integrating that into a larger, more realistic workflow?
That's the real question. And if Murty has effectively silenced Littlebird as a conversationalist, right, and turned it strictly into this silent observer, we really have to ask what exactly it is observing.
What is the camera pointing at?
Exactly. What happens when a machine watches you without you ever prompting it?
And this is where our digital stroll reaches its absolute peak, I think, because that passive observation is free and unlimited across all his machines. So Murty just let Littlebird run silently in the background for 36 consecutive hours.
Just running constantly.
So running. Yeah. It tracked every single keystroke, every diverted glance to a new tab, every abandoned task, every hyper-focused coding session, all of it. Yeah, and then he took that massive payload of raw telemetry, fed it into an analysis tool called Notebook, and published it as a digital log.
I mean, he essentially automated the creation of an objective, real-time documentary of his own mind.
He did. And the distinction Murty draws between this raw data capture and, say, a traditional journal entry, it is just staggering.
Oh, I'm sure they're fundamentally different things.
Completely. And Littlebird actually replies to his analysis with a phrase that, for me, serves as the ultimate legacy code for this entire exploration.
What did it say?
It pointed out that a curated journal is memory filtered through ego, whereas this 36-hour digital capture is memory filtered through nothing.
Oh, wow. Memory filtered through ego. We really need to pause on the psychological weight of that concept right there.
It's heavy.
Because when a human being recounts their day, the brain naturally acts as this internal public relations firm.
It really does. I mean, if I sit down to write a journal entry before bed, or even if I am just recounting my day to a friend over dinner or something, I am writing a story about who I hope I was today.
Exactly. You curate it.
Right. I'll say I spent 3 hours researching the new system architecture.
But the silent telemetry node tells a drastically different story, doesn't it?
So different.
The raw data shows, well, you opened the research document, sure, but then you immediately tabbed over to a news aggregator for 20 minutes.
Guilty.
Then you spent 45 minutes organizing your desktop folders because you didn't want to start reading. And then finally, you read 2 paragraphs of the research before opening a group chat.
Right. The human ego conveniently edits out all that friction, the hesitation, the procrastination.
We are completely unreliable narrators of our own lives.
Yeah.
And this digital observation layer, it just strips away that unreliability entirely.
It creates this completely new genre of self-documentation that doesn't judge you, but it absolutely refuses to lie to you. It just presents the raw mechanics of your divided attention.
Hold on, though. Because we are treating this uncurated memory like it is the holy grail of human existence, and I really question whether humanity is actually, neurologically or psychologically equipped to handle memory filtered through nothing.
Really? You think it's too much?
I do. Because the ego's filter isn't just a vanity project. In developmental psychology, the ego's primary function is as a defense mechanism. It protects us.
So you suspect the unfiltered truth might actually be destructive?
Honestly, I think it demands a massive, almost paralyzing amount of vulnerability. The human mind naturally blues the edges of our wasted time. It softens our daily failures.
And keep us moving forward.
Exactly. We do this subconsciously so that we maintain the psychological momentum necessary to just wake up and try again tomorrow.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. If you are forced to stare at a clinically precise, unfeeling log of your own inefficiency and distractibility every single evening, it could completely shatter your self-efficacy.
It would be brutal.
It would. Removing human error and ego from the data stream provides an incredibly pristine diagnostic tool for a system architect like lead architect Murty BVNS. But for the average human mind, that unvarnished reflection is incredibly harsh lighting.
That is a profound counterargument. The friction of the ego really does serve an evolutionary purpose. It kind of cushions the blow of our own mediocrity.
It absolutely does, yet Murty's architecture suggests that true optimization is fundamentally impossible if it's based on a hallucinated baseline.
Right, you can't fix what you refuse to see.
Exactly. You cannot fix a fragmented attention span if your internal PR firm convinces you that your focus is unbroken.
Which is exactly why Littlebird tells him that this specific 36-hour published capture is something literally no other tool on Earth could have made.
It's unique.
It's the synthesis of a machine's flawless, zero-cost memory and a human being's willingness to be perfectly uncomfortably perceived.
And that synthesis redefines what a digital companion can even be. I mean, we have spent the last decade training software to act like a sycophant, basically.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Just telling us what we want to hear.
Right. We want algorithms that cater to our preferences, agree with our worldviews, and smooth over our rough edges. But lead architect Murty BVNS took a totally mundane pricing constraint and used it to turn an AI into an impartial mirror.
And the trajectory of this evolution is exactly what makes the legacy code of Project Antaryami so vital for us to understand. Because it didn't start with some grandiose philosophical goal to achieve digital enlightenment or perfectly map the human mind.
Not at all. It began with a highly pragmatic calculation about server compute costs and active query pricing.
Just users simply trying to balance their tech budget.
Exactly. But by applying the digital prism, that mundane constraint revealed the massive gap between our curated self-image and the brutal reality of our attention.
Yeah.
By being forced to use the tool only for its purest, cheapest function, which is silent observation, Murty discovered a way to bypass the human PR firm entirely.
The constraint created the breakthrough.
That is the fundamental lesson of the veteran beta tester. Innovation rarely happens in environments of unlimited resources. It happens when you are forced to navigate the strict limitations of the systems around you.
Wow. Well, as we wrap up this digital stroll, I really want to leave you with one final thought to just examine as you navigate your own tools today.
Good idea.
We've spent all this time dissecting Murty's 36-hour experiment, but what if we ran that exact same experiment on you?
That is a scary thought.
It is. If an impartial observation layer were to just silently track your screens, your keystrokes, and the invisible tug-of-war for your attention over the next 36 hours, completely bypassing your ego's ability to edit the narrative, what unexpected, uncomfortable story would that raw data tell about what you truly value in life compared to what you just tell yourself you value?